Our next speaker is a man who has put the S in serial entrepreneur. He was part of the co-founding team of Priceline.com, the granddaddy of travel sites, and has been a former chief executive of ubid.com, the online auction site. Since university in Yale, he's been founding and building software and creating companies from scratch. His name is Jeff Hoffman. May we have you on stage, Jeff, please? And he will be talking basically on how to develop a thick skin in building businesses. In other words, overcoming criticism of your business idea, Jeff. Thanks.
Thanks. Am I on?
Yes, you are.
You guys hear me okay? All right. I wanted to start by saying, before we get into this, I'm going to talk a little bit about the power of ideas first, since we're talking about entrepreneurship here, and of course everything starts with having an idea in the first place. So I'm going to take a little time today to talk to you guys about ideas and idea generation. Then we're going to talk about something that Rebecca asked me to talk about, which was dealing with negativity and dealing with criticism. Because a lot of us have been through this, that when you have a great idea and nobody believes in it but you. And a lot of people are very negative, maybe about you, maybe about your idea. And so a lot of the, I heard somebody say earlier in the question and answer session, somebody was talking about how do you stay motivated and how do you fight through the hard times. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to tell you a little bit about kind of my story and how I did that as well. So let's start, if I can make this work. Okay. Is that on? I had this problem earlier, sorry. Are we not getting it there? There we go. So I want to talk a little bit about the power of ideas, and let me explain why that's so important. It's really interesting to me, by the way, coming here. I've been to Malaysia before, but this trip I had a little bit more opportunity to get to know some of you, and an opportunity to meet some of the people before I even got here. It was very interesting to me that there are a number of people that are in the room today that actually emailed me before I ever came here. People said, hey, I read that you're coming to Malaysia to the conference. I'd like to introduce myself and I'd like to talk about my concept. So I got a chance to meet some of you beforehand, yesterday when I got in town and last night. And throughout this time I've had a chance to meet some of the Malaysian entrepreneurs. It's interesting to me when I was thinking about all this because I actually don't, even though we are the Silicon Valley Comes to Malaysia conference, I actually don't live in Silicon Valley, have never lived there, but I am a U.S. entrepreneur. I didn't even raise earlier, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. Earlier we were talking about raising money from Silicon Valley venture capitalists, which in fact actually is not even where I raised money for the startups that I did. So I want to give you the perspective, starting off, about the fact that the power of an idea. And the power of an idea is simply this. And the beauty of ideas is that ideas do not care. A good idea does not care where it came from. A good idea does not care your age. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what race, what ethnicity you are. It doesn't matter what gender you are. A good idea is a good idea anytime, any place, from anybody in the world. And I think that's important because one of the things that concerns me is, again, in the early panel, we were talking about the fact that, people in Silicon Valley and maybe in the U.S. in general have advantages over you in terms of the infrastructure over other places, but that does not make, to me, you know what that sounds like? A little bit of an excuse, okay? That does not make the power of your idea any less. The power of an idea that occurred right here in this room is no less important and no less powerful than a good idea that occurred in Silicon Valley. So quit trying to talk yourself out of it and quit using that as an excuse. A good idea is a good idea no matter where the idea came from. And again, that's the beauty of it, that every morning when you wake up, you have another opportunity. Rebecca said in her closing, she gave a quote from Steve Jobs talking about the last day of your life. Right? Every morning when you wake up, and I'm going to show you a specific idea generation a concept here that I think we can all use. But every morning when you wake up, you might have a new idea today. Any morning that you wake up, that idea might be the biggest idea of your life, and it might be an idea that changes the world. And we live in a world now where one idea and one little company really can change the world, really can make the difference. And I heard the previous panel talking about thinking big and dreaming big. I understand what they were saying, that maybe if you're born and raised in Malaysia you're taught maybe to think more locally. But you know what? Once again, that's old news. All right? In the world we live in now, somebody in this room is going to create the next big thing. And telling me, well, we came from a different culture is just an excuse to talk yourself out of doing it. Your ideas count. Every idea counts. And every morning might be a new one. Now, I want to give you an example of that I was doing a video conference for an event like this. And it was in Europe, and I couldn't get there schedule-wise. And I was on the phone with these Europeans, or well, I was on a video chat, and somebody said that again to me. Somebody said to me, you know what, Jeff, it's easier because you're American. We're European. It's harder to do this. And I just thought that was particularly interesting because before I answered that question, I said, can you guys see me okay? I was on Skype. They said, sure. I said, can you hear me okay? And they said, sure. And they said, Skype's great. We use it for everything. And I had to point out, as you heard a minute ago, after they told me it's harder in Europe, you're American, it's much easier, that Skype, as you heard earlier, was created in a small apartment in Sweden by some young Swedish entrepreneurs. So it was great for me to say to these Europeans, I'm glad you're enjoying the Skype call because a few Europeans in a Swedish apartment created this thing, not somebody in Silicon Valley. It was perfect timing to say, quit finding excuses to believe that only Silicon Valley or only the U.S. can come up with a good idea. It is simply not true. Not saying that it's not harder. What I'm saying is anything worth doing in life is hard. Okay? When people tell me, and I did hear some of that, in some of your comments at the end of the panel just a minute ago, some people said it's harder here. Okay? Here's what I'm going to tell you. Get over that. It is harder. Okay? You can find a million reasons to talk yourself out of trying because it's harder. If it was easy, everybody would be a billionaire, right? The problems that are worth solving are the hard problems. So fight your way through that. And the level of energy that some people spend trying to convince me how hard it is, I sit there thinking, if you put all the energy you're putting into explaining all the excuses and all the reasons you can't do it, if you put that energy into finding ways to solve those problems, you'd be done already. Okay? So focus on that. Now I want to tell you a little bit of a story about idea generation. Because, again, it all starts with you got to have a good idea. So let's forget for a minute the infrastructure. Where you live, where you're from, what your age, race, or gender is. And let's just talk about where the good ideas come from. Because I want to tell you guys a little bit of a story that happened to me very recently. All in about, in the same 10-day period. So I was out at Google headquarters. I have a lot of friends there, and they invited me just to give me an update on what they're doing at Google. And as we've talked about, everybody in the world thinks of Google as one of the best, the most innovative companies in the world. They have programs specifically designed to help generate idea flow. So I went through Google for that day, and I listened to the things they were working on. I listened to all the ideas. And of course, they're Google. There were some great ideas. But I have to tell you where I went a few days later. I was asked to go on a trip very much like this, and I try to personally, I'm a big believer in mentoring, so I try to personally spend some amount of my time every week, every month, whatever I can do, doing things like this, trying to mentor and trying to help us all together build a global community of entrepreneurship, right? So there's no geographical boundaries don't matter anymore. There's no reason we can't work together, right? You communicate with people across town on email and on text and everything, so it doesn't really matter if I'm in another country, not anymore. We can still work together. So I was asked, this was a White House and State Department project in the United States, over in Egypt, to go do an entrepreneur's boot camp. And the same question was being asked that we're asking today. How can we build better infrastructure in Malaysia to support entrepreneurs? Okay, so we're separating two things here. Your ideas are just as good as the ideas at Google or Silicon Valley. You need some infrastructure help. That's why Rebecca and Dash put this conference on. That's why people like myself and the rest of the group came here to see if we could help. So I was asked to do that in Egypt. And we went over there to teach, and those are some of the pictures of some of the entrepreneurs I worked with. We went over there to teach an entrepreneurship boot camp and help work on the infrastructure of Egypt. So here I am, having just been at Google headquarters. And that particular day, we were out to take some pictures by the pyramids. And we were standing, this was kind of interesting, because we were standing in the dirt and grime of Cairo's a 6,000-year-old city. We were standing in the dirt and grime out in Egypt, in the birthplace of civilization, in a place where, in fact, I had kind of a funny moment, because I touched a handrail going downstairs, and I looked, and my hand was just completely black. And I said to one of the Egyptians, is there something that cuts through 6,000 years of grime? And the guy said, yeah, democracy, which I thought was a really good answer for the moment. But anyway, one of the guys, I'm standing out there in the dirt, in the last place, this could not be farther from Google headquarters. The last place I'm expecting innovation, and an Egyptian guy came up to me, and he said, almost nervously, not nervous about talking, nervous because he thought his idea might be dumb, okay, which is silly. He said, can I share something with you? I have a business idea. And I said, sure. I stood there, like I said, in the 6,000-year-old dirt of Cairo with camels walking around me and the pyramids in the background, and heard the single best, most innovative, creative business idea I've heard in years. All right? And it really reinforced to me, this guy standing there had an idea that was absolutely brilliant. I sat there thinking, all the engineers in Google, and they didn't come up with this, some guy standing in the dirt outside the pyramids did. There is no excuse for you to convince yourself that your ideas are any less than anybody else's anywhere else in the world. That really reinforced that to me. So, I wanted to say, oops, what happened to that slide? Hang on, sorry about that. This thing is, can you guys just do it manually? All right. So, all right. So I wanted to say this. I kind of wanted to summarize that point. Again, I've been really blown away meeting a lot of you. And like I said, it was really impressive to me that a couple weeks ago, before I ever left the United States, before I even was getting ready for this trip, a number of you started emailing me in the U.S. So, you know, I heard earlier in the panel session, there was a discussion about go to Silicon Valley, go to the States, go to the places you need to be. Well, the truth is you can't all do that, okay? Everybody can't get on a plane and fly to the United States and go to Silicon Valley. But once again, are you going to use that as an excuse, or are you going to find another way? So you know what a bunch of you did? I got emails in the U.S. saying, look, don't mean to intrude, but I saw that you're coming to Malaysia, and I'd like to tell you about me and my idea before you even get there, and maybe we could have a little dialogue. Do I have time to answer every email I get? Do the other panelists? Not necessarily. But I'll tell you what, you have a 0% chance that I will answer an email that I never get. All right? If you take a shot at it, and you email some of the other panelists, and you start researching people in the U.S., it is true that sometimes you get a random email from someone you don't know, you won't answer. But you know what? You know how successful people typically got successful? Odds are they were smart. And you know what smart people know? Smart people know that the next big idea could come from anywhere. So you know what smart people do? They read some of those emails, okay? Because you might have just missed. You might have been ignorant enough to just miss the best idea that you ever heard. If I wasn't talking to some kid in the dirt of Egypt, I would have never heard that idea. If I wasn't reading some of the emails that I get from Malaysia, who knows what I might have just missed. So take a shot at it. Those people are not smarter than you. It was really interesting to me as an entrepreneur that I had people that were role models to me in the world, business people. And as I sort of developed in my business career, I got to go out and meet some of the people that used to be my role models. Like, you know, in the U.S., obviously, one of the icons of retail success is Walmart. And the Walmart stores made Sam Walton a multi-billionaire, the top of the success, the rich list. And I had an opportunity one afternoon to spend the afternoon with Sam Walton. You know, just like one time I spent an afternoon with Donald Trump. Every time I've had a chance to meet various leaders of different types, I've sat down and tried to understand what are the things that made them successful. Why are they there and I'm over here? You know, why are we where we are today and somebody we're watching on TV or reading in the news? What did they do that's successful? And here's the big surprise that I learned. They're not smarter than us, okay? I met these people, they're not. I met these people, I would walk away and I would think, wait a minute, that guy? That girl? Are you kidding me? And I realized that the key to entrepreneuring success was not that these people were smarter than us. The difference between us and them was they got up and did something about it. They stopped coming up with excuses and reasons why their idea might not work, and they just went and launched it. They got out there in the market. So I was amazed at how these icons, these, you know, the titans, the giants of industry, there's no doubt there are the Steve Jobs out there, people that just really are smarter than us. But there are a lot of people that are no smarter than you. They were just industrious, passionate, and focused, and they got it done. So quit thinking that there's all these really smart people in places like Silicon Valley. They're just as smart people right here in this room. The difference, we know, is that they have an attitude in a place like Silicon Valley that we don't. I'll give you that. They were raised in a more can-do attitude. But that's yesterday, right? The whole reason we're all in this room today is to get past that. We can't keep saying they had more advantages than us. Okay, forget it already. They do have infrastructure that you don't have. So why are we all here today? And why did Rebecca and Dash and others want to put this conference on? Because we can build that infrastructure. Instead of spending time talking about what other people have that we don't, let's spend that time building the things that they have that we need. There's no reason that we can't get that done here. I certainly would not be over here. I flew about 24 hours straight to spend 90 minutes with you guys. We are here because we believe in the brain power right here in this room and in Malaysia, and we think that if we can network all this together, which we can, and help attract money and investors and attention to your marketplace and to your entrepreneurs, that you can succeed the same way that we're doing in Egypt, Silicon Valley, or anywhere else. So yes, you need infrastructure, but let's build it instead of complaining about it. Those people believe that they can achieve their dreams. You know, I wrote that slide before I came here because in the last panel, the moderator asked you how many people here, have a big goal, intend to be, whatever your goal is, you're going to make your first million or billion or whatever by this time. It doesn't matter what it is. The question was, how many of you have big dreams? And you do. And like I said, when I got here, the guy that picked me up at the airport, the limo driver, started telling me about his business plan and his business idea. And the limo company was a company that he launched to do transportation. And the guy that was holding the little sign that said, "Welcome to Malaysia," was talking to me about his studies and his goals. When I got to this hotel, there was 2 people standing in the lobby saying, "We estimated what time you were coming. We wanted to intercept you to run some ideas by you." So you can't tell me that people in Malaysia don't have the same passion, aggression, and belief in their dreams, because I was here 30 minutes and I already got hit by 4 people wanting to talk about their entrepreneurial dreams. That's what it takes to succeed. You don't have to be smart, you do have to be passionate, and you do have to be energetic. So it was a great welcome to Malaysia for me to have people be really aggressive like that. It's hard sometimes when, I've done these things before where I have flown 30 hours somewhere, and I felt like, wait a minute, if I care more about your goals than you do, this isn't going to work. Okay? You need to be more passionate about you than I am in order for this to work. So I'm just complimenting you here that it was great to get that kind of reception. I said, guys, I just need a shower, please. And people were pitching me business ideas already. That's how things get done. So again, your ideas are as good as anybody's here. As I said, the biggest thing is simply taking that first step and getting out there and launching something. You can think of a million reasons why it's not going to work or why it's hard to do, but the truth is, as Jonas said to you before, just get out there and launch something. Take the big step, take the risk. If you are not a risk taker, you are not an entrepreneur anyway, you're in the wrong room. Okay, maybe there's a conference on the 3rd floor you could attend, but it isn't this one if you're not willing to take risks. And think about it, what are you taking risks in? What are you betting on? You're betting on the most sure thing in the world that you could possibly bet on. It's you. Entrepreneurs take gambles on themselves. The thing that they're betting on is them. And you can't place a better bet. You can't make a more important investment in your time, your money, and your energy than investing in yourself and your own development. So when entrepreneurs take risks, it's actually a more calculated risk than you think, because you know you, and that's what you're betting on when you do that. I want to tell you guys a little technique. So sometimes when I travel around, I've been very lucky to be involved in more than one venture. I started a software company when I was a college student, which was interesting because everybody thinks, oh, you were an entrepreneur early on. And I said, no, I was just broke. Okay, I didn't start my company because I wanted to be an entrepreneur and learn about business. I started my company because I worked really hard to go to the university I wanted to go to. And when I got there, I found out you actually have to pay for university, and you're supposed to pay before you get there. They said, you need to go home. I said, I'm not going home. I put in a lot of work to attend this university, and they said that you need to figure out some way to pay your bills. So I started my first software company as a college student, okay, with just one catch. The reason I picked software is because it's high value, right? Back then, no one was quite sure what to charge for software, and no one was quite sure if the amount you were charging was too high or too little. So there was value in it. So I started a software company with only one big problem. I don't know anything about software. I don't know how to write a line of code, which was a little bit of a problem. But I'm going to tell you something. That highlights another thing that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes to you guys. The belief that you have to know everything in order to succeed is not true. I'm going to tell you in a few minutes that your job as a leader and a founder is to be the team leader. What you have to do is be able to build a team. You do not have to do everything yourself. So I did not know how to write software, but I knew how to market. I knew how to write and communicate clearly in proposals, right? So I knew sort of the financial part. I had a good idea how to manage it. So I started that first company as a student. And I went out, I won my first contract because I wrote a really good proposal. It's just, I didn't even know what the stuff in the proposal meant, even though I wrote it. But I was able to find a bunch of people and said, can you explain to me what I just wrote? They looked at me for a minute and said, I could code this. And I said, you're hired. So I hired a bunch of people to code the stuff, marked it all up, gave the difference to the university, and did this for 4 years until my education was paid for. It was trial by fire, but I didn't know if I could do this, but I never thought I couldn't either. What I said was, instead of talking myself out of success, I'm going to try. And if I fail, then I'll know. But you won't ever know until you take that first step and go out there and do that. So I did that. And my next company, when I got out of school, my first software company was a company I started in my 20s that I sold, as I mentioned before, to American Express. And I've been doing that ever since. Priceline was the 5th company. I sold a couple companies, one to a U.S. company, one to a European company. Priceline, at the time, we did an IPO and took that company public. It's today about a $25 billion company. I've been through a few. I'll mention something later. I started an entertainment company where we went and made movies and music that did well also. And somebody said to me one day, you've been successful more than one time. What are you doing that I'm not doing? And it occurred to me that actually the question that person asked was a really relevant question to me, because one of the things I do all the time is study other examples, right? I go on and try to study when somebody or something was successful, what did they do? What did they do right? What did they do different than me? When somebody fails, I try to read about that. When a company goes out of business and say, what did those people do wrong? Why did they go out of business? How can I do something, how can I avoid that? So it occurred to me that to start studying successful people and paying attention to that. And here's what I noticed that I want to talk to you about now. The reason that some people keep having good ideas, and the Steve Jobs of the world or whoever you want to pick, and keep coming up with more success, is because the way they look at the world around them is different than what the rest of us are doing. And here's what I mean by that. If you work in healthcare, just pick an example, what do you spend all your day doing? Healthcare, right? All day long you're thinking about healthcare, you're working on healthcare. In the evening you're dealing with your family and the other things that matter to you, but at work you live in healthcare. If I was to say to you, hey, let's take off today and go look at what's going on in the travel industry, you would say, huh? I work in healthcare. I don't care what they're doing in the travel industry. That's our normal mindset, is that we focus on the things in our world and we stay focused on that. But the most innovative people in the world don't do that. Okay? They take a day every once in a while, they leave the healthcare business, and they go look at what everybody else, everywhere else in the world is doing to see if they can learn something outside of their little bubble. So I'll tell you what I developed, and if this is helpful to you, great. But I developed this little process that I do in order to make sure that my thinking is broad enough that ideas don't get shut out. Somebody was asking me what I thought. Everybody's mind all day long has ideas going through it. But I don't know if you have those here, but in the States, especially in the southern United States, we have these lighted things that are bug zappers. It's just a light that hangs outside and it's electric. And a bug flies to it and it hits it and it goes zzz, and it's just dead instantly. And when somebody asked me about how most people process ideas, all I could think of these little bug zappers. The idea comes in your head and it's fried immediately because it wasn't healthcare. I do healthcare, I don't care what he does in banking or travel. So ideas float through our head all day, but we kill them all. We kill them because we don't think they're relevant. So I've created this process for myself. I don't have a name for it, so I've just been calling it infosponging. But let me tell you what I do. At the beginning of every single day, I take the first 20 minutes, and if you can't do this every day, maybe you can do it once a week. The first 20 minutes of my day, I do not answer my phone. I do not look at email, no texts. I shut off all the world around me, and I get out of healthcare or whatever it is you do for a living. Forget it for a minute. You know what I do? I take 20 minutes literally just to wonder about stuff. So most of the time, I'll just go on the internet and I just follow links. Anything that catches your eye. I start looking at things, and I wrote there, wonder, click, repeat. Okay? And I'm following things that are in my industry. I'm looking to see what new innovations have been introduced in the travel industry, even though if I don't work in it. I'm looking to see what Apple's next release looks like. I'm reading about some new legislation and a government effort to ease financing rules that might have an impact. I'm looking at consumer trends as an example. I go on every single day onto Yahoo, and I look at least once a day, and I look at what the top 10 searches on the internet worldwide are right now. What am I looking for? I don't know. What am I trying to do? I am trying to constantly absorb the world around me to get a sense. I'm definitely looking for disruptive events. Somebody just released a new technology product, and I think, wow, how's that going to change the world? I look for convergence, right? When more and more things, companies buy each other, technology, there's a new functionality in your handheld device. So I'm trying to just absorb the world around me, and what I do with all that is I take all those data points and I write them down. So during my 20 minutes, I write down, new bill is being, passed, presented before Parliament to change this legislation. And then I write down, new banking laws make it easier to get this kind of money. Then I write down, Apple's latest project is this. Then I write down, the banking industry is now adding this new product and service to all its features. Then I write down these consumer trends. Consumers in Malaysia are more and more interested in this, and this is the way they want to be serviced. What do all those things mean? I don't know. At the end of the day, here's what I do. At the end of every day, I take that sheet of paper, and I look at all those things I wrote down that just seemed interesting. And you know what happens almost every day? Most days, nothing. I look at it and I say, okay, that was fun. I didn't learn, I have no idea what that means. But you know what happens if you do that day after day? One by one, all those little dots, all those little data points, all that little information starts to form a picture. And what happens is, one day I say, whoa, wait a minute. That new legislation, combined with that new technology, combined with that new consumer trend, something just occurred to me that never would have occurred to me if I wasn't tracking the world point by point as I go along. And so I do this thing, and I literally do this. I know this is going to sound silly, but I do this every day. At the end, I ask myself the following question every single day. Oop, it went away. I ask myself this: what can I do today that I couldn't do yesterday? At the end, when I look at this picture, when I look at all the dots that are out there, I ask myself the question, what can I do today that I couldn't do yesterday? Why is that important? It's important because, as you've heard from a lot of people here, the race is now to the swift and the agile. This isn't about big companies anymore. Big companies don't make the rules and they don't rule the world anymore. The best idea and the fastest person to market can have a big impact. Little people in little companies have changed the way we live. Right? There's a lot of company stories, and a lot of the fabric of society and the products that you use every day, online and offline, that were not created anymore by big companies. They were created by the people in this room because they saw the opportunity. They woke up in the morning and said, you know what? There's something I could do today that didn't even exist yesterday. It wasn't even possible, and they jump on it. That's what the most innovative people do. So let me give you a real-world example. Okay? So if you look at these events here, I'm just going to give you some as I was seeing them in my life at the time. So remember, we're online during the day, and we're just taking our 20 minutes to absorb the world around us and writing points. So for me, one day I saw a news story. It wasn't even online, it was on TV. But it was a story about distressed inventory. And in this case, they were talking about the fact that the CBS News guy was saying that every single day, 600,000 empty airplane seats fly around the country. So I wrote that down. What does that mean? I don't know. It's just interesting. It's interesting that all these empty airline seats are flying around. Don't know what that means. That was one data point. Oops, sorry. Okay, let me see if I can back that up again. I forgot to take the training course in remote control. That's going the wrong way. I want to back up. Okay, so that was one point. A news story about empty airline seats flying around. Then I read an article online about the distribution of perishable commodities. They were talking about things like fruit. Do I really care how they sell fruit around the world? No. But you know what? If I didn't take time to read that, it wouldn't have been one of the data points on this chart. So I glanced at it. I'm only doing 20 minutes. I'm busy. You're busy. You have to work on healthcare all the rest of the day. But during those 20 minutes, you're going to learn some things that your mind wasn't open to before. So I read the story about the distribution of perishable commodities and how the internet was great because those products need to be sold now. And traditional advertising takes too long to market the product. So the internet's great for perishable commodities. And if you think about it, if you combined it with the one before that, what is more perishable than, let's say, an airplane seat? When the door closes, all the goods are spoiled. It's over. I mean, a banana lasts for 3 days, right? I got 3 days to sell you that banana. As soon as that door closes, those goods are perished. If you look at the next thing, I read a story about dynamic pricing and yield management systems and how certain industries run pricing all night long. So when I come into the grocery store, they probably don't change the price of a loaf of bread every day. But if I go online to buy a hotel room, an airline ticket, or whatever, they're changing in real time all the time. They look at the yield, they look how full the hotel is, what day it is, what the historical fill rate of that hotel is. They look at the rates, and they adjust things all the time. So I read a story about dynamic pricing. I read a story one day about soft goods. And I remember, that was a big one to me, because I remember thinking, for all of you out there that want to launch a business, I didn't know what business I wanted to launch, but I knew the parameters of it. And for an example, I wrote down that I don't really know distribution, so I don't really want anything that requires a warehouse, a forklift, or shipping. All right? So I don't know what my idea is, but I know that I have no skills in running warehouses and forklifts and shipping. So let's think of something that we could do online that you don't have to ship the product to somebody. Well, gee, travel is a pretty good one. I don't actually have to ship you the airplane, just a confirmation number. Don't need a warehouse to sell you travel online. And then last is all the trends about online consumers. So my point is, if you were in the world and you were reading all these stories and you were looking at all these things going on around you, and you woke up the next morning and you created one of these, it was a really good thing that you were looking at the world around you. So it enabled us as a team to see a series of events that were happening in the world, to wake up one morning and ask that question, what can I do today that I couldn't even do yesterday? And in this case, the answer was a $25 billion startup. A company that was started by a handful of people on a table in a room who were no smarter than anybody in this room. Okay? We just moved. We saw the opportunity, we looked at all the events going on in the world, and we said, whoa, that's cool, we could do this right now, and we went and did it. That company would not exist, I think, were it not for this process of saying, let's absorb the world around us, let's watch the changes, and every day let's see if there's something we can do right now that we couldn't have even done before. Jonas also told you about innovate, do something new. This is the best way to spot those opportunities. So I want to tell you about now let me continue that story, because in the Priceline case, and it wasn't the first one for me, but I can tell you at the beginning of Priceline, I was telling friends, they said, what are you working on now? And I was explaining it to people, and people were saying, wait, let me understand this. You don't know what airline you're flying on, you don't know what time you're leaving, and you don't know where you're connecting, but you have to pay in advance? And I said, sure. And you know what people told me? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Okay? People said, no one is going to do that. And everywhere I went was negativity. Right? So if I had listened to all that, and I'm going to tell you a story about how to deal with that, and what you should listen to and what you shouldn't. But I will tell you, nobody believed that our idea was a good idea. Everybody was negative, and everybody criticized it. If we had stopped there, there wouldn't have been this company created. Today the company's in like 45 countries. Asia is probably the biggest growth area, and there's 100 million consumers using it, which is what generates a $25 billion value on the market, an idea that was stupid. Okay? So let's talk about how you deal with negativity, because we all know that you get that. And there's two types of negativity. I'm going to talk about both. One is that nobody believes in you and your mission, and is trying to keep yourself propped up when everything is just hard. Some days are just hard. We've all been through that. The dream is kind of fading. You can't eat. You're worried about your bills. Everyone's telling you, I told you that was stupid. You're wondering if you made the wrong decision. So as an entrepreneur, part of it is negativity about you, and the other part is about your idea. So let me tell you the story about dealing with negativity about you and whether or not you're an entrepreneur. So I was working for a very brief time at a big company. And I'm not here to judge what's right or what's wrong, but obviously I'm in the entrepreneuring side, not the big company side. So they can come defend themselves later if they want. So I was at the big company I worked for, and my boss, this is a true story, I was sitting in 8 million cubicles, and my boss came and got me. And he said, Jeff, come with me. Well, in the cubicles, everybody can hear everything, right? They look like prairie dogs. I don't know if you know that, where people pop up over the cubicle and then go back down. So I see all the little prairie dog heads. Everybody's popping up and going. It looks like the Nature Channel or Animal Planet. They're all watching me because the boss came and got me. And he took me to the window. And there's nothing out our window except a parking lot. And he said, Jeff, do you want to succeed at this company? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, you want to get ahead? Because, there's a management slot coming up, and I have to decide who to promote. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, tell me what you see in the parking lot. And I was like, okay, this sounds like a trick question. So I said, cars, right? And he said, yes. And I was like, yes, I got that right. That's one step closer to a promotion. I was like, I still don't get it, but I said cars. And he said, I come over here every single day, and I look out this window at the end of the day. And he said, what do you think I'm looking for? And I'm like, I don't know, it worked last time, so I'll try cars again. So I said, cars? And he said, yes. So I think this is going really well, right? I don't know where it's going, but it's going really well. And he said, do you know why I look for those cars at the end of the day? I said, no, sir. And he said, I got to figure out who to promote. And the way I figure that out is I come out here every single day to see whose car is the last car in the parking lot. That's what he told me. And he said, that's how I know who's working hardest here. And I said, wait, what if that's the person that's the most confused and can never get their work done on time? And he looked at me like, you don't speak. Okay? I said, sorry, it just wasn't a suggestion. But he said that I know who is working the hardest and who I'm going to promote because their car is the last one here every night. And I was like, whoa, this is scary. And he said, have you learned something here? And I knew the right answer to that. I have to say yes. So I said yes. And he said, what did you learn? What are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to buy 2 cars and just leave one here all the time. And he said, what happened was all the prairie dogs started laughing in the cubicles behind me. And he turned and looked at me, angry. And he said, I suppose you thought that was funny. And I said, honestly, it kind of was funny, okay? And he just turned and stormed off. And I said, well, there went that promotion. That was the end for me. And I literally, after that, I said, I can't do this. And I don't know if I'm going to succeed as an entrepreneur, but I can't work for that. So I didn't start entrepreneuring because I wanted to make money. I wanted freedom. I want to make my own choices. I want to control my own life. And I do not want to follow that guy off a cliff every single day, saluting as I plummet down the cliff. So I said, I went and I said to them, and I want to tell you this story because you've probably been through this. I went to the management and I said, look, I'm leaving. And they said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And you know what they said to me? You probably all dealt with this. They said, why? You think you're too smart? You think you're smarter than us? And I said, no, sir. And what happened was I got a call from this guy, Charles. Charles was the role model at the company. Everybody wanted to be Charles. Charles had been there like 24 years, and he was the highest you could rise in the technical ranks, and he was everybody's hero, including mine. We would look at Charles and say, wow, someday when I grow up, I want to be Charles. So I get this call from Charles. And Charles says, I need to see you in my office. I heard you're leaving. So I walked to Charles' office, and here was a depressing thought. He's been there 24 years. He has an office in the corner. I have a cubicle. It took me 17 steps to get there. And I said, wait a minute. If the net result of 24 years is I'm going to move 17 steps left, just kill me now. Because that's all he advanced in those years. I wasn't judging him, but he was the role model. So I went into Charles' office, and I said, you wanted to see me? He said, so you want to be an entrepreneur? I said, I do. And he said, you think you're smarter than me? And I said, no, you're like the smartest person I've ever met. And he said, yeah, this company's good enough for me, and it's not good enough for you. And I said, I didn't say that. And he said, but you're leaving. And I said, I want to pursue my dreams. And he started laughing. I said, that's funny. And he said, it is funny. And he said, you will be back here begging me for your job. And I said, geez, how about good luck? Okay. And I said, all right. And he said, you know why? He said, I know you think you're so smart and you think you're better than us and this place isn't good enough and you're going to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, wow, I didn't say anything. I just resigned. And he said, well, guess what? He said, the reason I know you're going to be back here looking for your job is because you're going to be a major failure in business. And I said, why is that? And he said, 3 reasons. He said, you have 3 fundamental flaws. I've been watching you since you worked here. And these will prevent you from ever being successful in business. Now keep in mind, this is the smartest person in the company and the most successful guy in the company, the highest ranking person that everybody in the company wants to be. So this is hitting me really hard. He said, I'm going to tell you the 3 reasons you'll never succeed in business. And first, you have no focus. He said, I have worked on projects that I've stayed on the same project and worked on it for 4 years, and you're always doing 10 different things. He said, the key to success in business is focus. You have no focus, you will be a miserable failure in business. And I kind of sat back down in the seat. I mean, my hero is telling me what a moron I am. And he said, number 2. And I was like, really? We have to continue this? I give up. You won. And he said, number 2, he said, you're so impatient. And I said, well, that's true. And he said, when you were a child, did your mother never tell you patience is a virtue? And I said, 400 times a day, but what's your point? He said, they tell you that for a reason. Adults know, right? You're impatient. And he said, to succeed in business, you have to have the patience to wait things out, to work on those long projects. And I said, okay. And he said, oh, I'm not done yet. And I was like practically sliding out of the chair on the floor, so depressed. And he said, there's a third reason you'll be a huge failure. And I said, what? And he said, you have no respect for authority. He said, people way smarter than you wrote the books, made the rules, and blazed these trails. And you think you can just go on a new route? These rules are here for a reason, and you're just going to go around them? He said, who do you think you are? Right? He said, you have no respect for the rules and no respect for authority. And I said, are we done? And he said, yes. And he said, you can call me when you fail, but I probably won't give you your job back. And I walked away thinking I would poke both my eyes out before I asked you for a job again. I walked out of there and I went home. And I was really depressed because the smartest person I knew and the most successful role model in the company told me I was an idiot. Okay? And I sat there. All I could do was doubt myself. Maybe he's right. He's the smartest person in my world, and he told me all of my flaws. So I couldn't think about business. I was too depressed to eat. So I turned on the television, and there was a sports show on. And the sports show was a professional golfer. And his guest that day was a professional baseball player. And the golfer took the club, and he swung the club, and he drove the golf ball beautifully down the fairway. And then he handed the club to the baseball player. He said, do it like I did it. And the baseball player swung a horrible swing, and the ball bounced 4 feet. And he said, you're swinging it like a baseball bat, not like a golfer. And the baseball player said, sorry. The golfer said, I'm going to show you again. He took the club, and he swung the club, and he hit the ball beautifully. And then he handed the golf club to the baseball player and said, now do what I did. The baseball player had another horrible swing, and the ball went off into the water. And the golfer turned and said, you really, really are a bad golfer. You keep swinging like a baseball player. And the baseball player turned and said, I'm the 2-time league champion. I've won 3 championship rings, and I make $20 million a year playing baseball. He said, I'm okay with my swing. Okay? And you know what happened to me? I sat bolt upright, and it was my moment of realization. Do you know what my problem was? I was taking advice from golfers, and I want to play baseball. Okay? I realized that Charles is a golfer, and Charles is telling me what a horrible golfer I'm going to be. And then I realized that everybody I talked to about my business idea and about being an entrepreneur were golfers, and I wanted to play baseball. So the realization was, I need to go find some baseball players. I need to find mentors and role models whose career I want to be like, not the people that are conveniently around me. That takes work. Everybody around me was a golfer. They can't tell me how to play baseball. So I went and did a lot of work to try to find a mentor, somebody that played baseball, somebody that knew it. And you guys are going to love this because this is a true story. I finally got this really successful entrepreneur to just have lunch with me. Literally, he called one day and he said, if you promise to never speak to me again and leave me alone, I will have lunch with you. I said, it's the only way you're getting rid of me. He said, fine, let's have lunch. So we went down and we had lunch and we chatted for a long time. And he said, you know what, Jeff? You're going to be a really good entrepreneur. I said, really? And I said, why? And he said, 3 reasons. Okay? He said, seriously, he said, you are a brilliant multitasker. And I said, dude, yesterday I was out of focus. Okay? And he said, and you know what? He said, you have this unending drive to get it done now. I said, yeah, they call that impatience where I come from. And he said, and third, you're not afraid to try something no one else has tried before. And I said, disrespect for authority? I said, I'm not judging authority. I'm just willing to try something no one else has tried before. So it was really interesting that when I went and hung out with the baseball player, he said, you're going to be a brilliant entrepreneur. You have all the right tools. That was a huge moment in my life. And I will tell you that if you are around people that are not supporting your desire, your dreams, and your goals of being an entrepreneur, quit listening to them. Okay? If you go talk to people that emulate what you want to be, and they tell you that, listen to them. Okay? But it gives you a false positive and a false negative. Your mother is always going to tell you you're the prettiest girl in the room. But here's a hint, you might not be. Okay? But your mother will always tell you that. If that's what you care about, why don't you go talk to somebody who works for a modeling agency and ask them. So that was a big moment for me in dealing with negativity, was to make sure that I was surrounding myself with people that I wanted to be like and listen to their opinion, not the people that you conveniently spend every day with. There are times where I just stopped telling my dreams to the people I dealt with every day because they were golfers. And I waited until I was with my peers, who you guys can meet, should be networking in this event and meeting the people in this room, because those are the teammates you need to be sharing your ideas with. So what about validating your business idea? How are we doing on time? Okay. Okay. I want to tell you something about validating your business idea here. And I told you before that when we went to launch our company, and I've had this many times, but even at Priceline, everybody thought it was a really bad idea. I'll tell you a really quick story. I had a reporter that had been watching my career. He was with the Wall Street Journal. And this guy called me one day and said, "What are you working on now?" And I explained the Priceline thing. And he actually said, "No one is going to do that." And I said to this guy, "How much do you make working for the Wall Street Journal?" And he said, I said, $150,000 a year. He said, something like that. And I said, "Well, let me tell you something." I said, "The total marketing budget we have for you and everybody you know is zero. Okay? You're not the customer. I don't expect you to get it. I don't expect you to think it's a good idea." Not only does our customer not work at a company like yours, but they probably don't even read the Wall Street Journal in the earlier days. Our customer, what I want to tell you is there's a huge difference between the guy on the left and the guys on the right. What you need to do is quit taking an opinion from somebody you're not trying to sell your product to. If your product is a travel product designed for low-income people, maybe our people were at these discount stores. They didn't work on Wall Street. You know what we did? We got out of our office, we went to these stores, and we talked to people that were actually the buying customer. So the only way to validate your idea is to quit listening to the people around you unless they are exactly the customer you're selling to. If you were selling a product that's for teenagers, you need to be talking to teenagers and their parents who make the buying decision, not your 36-year-old friend who doesn't have a teenager and doesn't really know what they buy. Validate your business idea with the customer, not the people around you, not your family and not your friends, unless they're the customer. I guess I'll go into the sort of closing part right here. I had this picture because a lot of people that I worked with early in my career, I used to go to a friend's house every Friday. And every Friday night, we'd all gather at Craig's house. Everybody would sit on the couch. And everybody in the room had an idea. And they would say, "This is the last year. I swear, this December I'm quitting this company to go chase my dream." And everyone else would say, "I got this really cool idea yesterday." And you know what happened next Friday? It was gone, like the bug zapper. Next Friday, I said, "I got another really cool idea." And one day I sat there and said, "We're going to come up with every idea ever known to man, and we're going to launch none of them if we don't get off this couch." Okay? So I realized that when I'd met all these people that were not smarter than me, I realized that the key to success for you as an entrepreneur is you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Just get up and launch the thing. And I do want to say, I want to leave time for questions here, that well, you heard this before, you will fail. Okay? You will fail. You need to get over that. So what? I mean, there's something in life much worse than failing. There's no shame in life in failing. The shame in life is in not trying. If you try your business and it fails, you can go home at night and say, "I gave it my best shot, it wasn't meant to be." If you never try it, you will spend the rest of your life saying, "I wonder what I could have done." And that lives inside you way worse than failure. Failure, you get up, you laugh about it, you learn something, and you go do it again. Successful people have failed, and I'll tell you this, if you never fail at anything, you're not trying hard enough. Okay? If you've never failed, you're not pushing the envelope. Push harder, you will fail, but you will learn and you will be stronger for it every single time. And so, as I said before, the most important thing for you to do is get out of your office and launch something. I mentioned this before, that you cannot, the worst place to design a product is at your house or your office, because the customer isn't there. If your product is for grocery shoppers that are lower income, then go to a lower income grocery store, talk to some people, and figure out what they want. Get out of your office, get into the field, talk to the market, design a product, launch it, and let them fix it. The market always adjusts the product. The market will tell you as long as you are ready to listen, which is what I put in capital letters there. So get off the couch, launch your product, talk to the people that are going to buy your product, let them modify your product, and keep in mind that you cannot do this alone. No matter who you are, you cannot do this alone. You are not, I love to say this, because entrepreneurs that are successful have this really bad problem. They think they're smart now because they did something successful. You are never as smart as you think you are. Okay? And no matter how you tell the story later, I love Steve Jobs, and I think he's an icon. But you may not know this, Apple had other employees. Okay? There were actually other people that worked there and did some of that stuff and built it. I'm pretty sure he didn't hand assemble every single item and design them himself. He gets all the credit he deserves, and he should. He didn't do it alone. He had a company that hired the best people in the industry and made them want to work there. That is your job as a leader, is to build a team where the people that are smarter than you, some people feel threatened. It's an ego thing. I don't want to hire her. She's way smarter than me. Are you kidding? I want to hire her and then go get her coffee, okay? Because she's going to build me something that no one else can build. Your job is to hire people smarter than you and then make it a great place for them to work. Build yourself the best team out there and go play a role. Just because you're the CEO or the founder does not make you the smartest person, and you do not have to know, just like I didn't know how to write software, how to do everything. You just need to do something on the team. Get your team together, help them, and play a particular role around it. And then lastly, when you build a team, here's one thing that kills me, because people always ask me, well, I have no money, and it's a startup. How do I get people to work for me? And you know, here's the thing that I hear people do. They go out and they say to somebody, here's what I need you to do. I want to buy a really big boat someday, so I need you to work 8 days a week until your whole family gets mad at you and I make money. Okay? They always tell you what they want. Do not go out and tell somebody, here's my plan for how I'm going to get rich. Your job is to go, for me to go to you and say, what are your goals? What are you doing in your career? What would make your life a success, and how can I help you do that? Those employees want to work for you. The proudest moment I ever had in my business career, I sold one of my companies, and I was doing a news interview, and they were reading all these numbers. And they said, you had all these profits and all these revenues and all this sales growth. What are you most proud of? And I said, the thing I'm most proud of isn't even on your sheet of paper. I said, the thing I'm most proud of is in all the years I ran this company, not one person who worked for me ever quit. So that's the most important thing I ever did. You know why we had those numbers? Thank you. We had those numbers because we had the best people in the industry and they didn't want to work anywhere else. That's where I spent my time. I'm gonna skip that part for right now. I just put that up there because the best way to start a sentence for me ever that shows me people are thinking is I love it when people walk up to me and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you could do this? Because we don't have time to cover that blue sky thinking right now. I'm going to end with this as the last slide. And this is important because sometimes I even have relatives, let alone friends, that say, oh, well, I've been successful more than once. Jeff's lucky. And I sit there thinking, lucky? While you were looking for, one time a news reporter said to me, what's the secret to success? And I said, the secret to success is while you guys were all looking for the secret, I was at work. Okay? That's the secret to success. It's hard work. So I'm going to end with a story that really meant a lot to me in my life. The guy on the blue trunks, purple trunks, is a friend of mine. Personal friend of mine in the States. His name's Evander Holyfield. He was the heavyweight champion of the world. In the picture you see there, he is knocking out Mike Tyson for the first time Mike Tyson had ever been knocked down or knocked out in his entire life. Evander is his own type of entrepreneur. In sport, was a success. But here's the lesson that I learned that I want you to never forget about hard work. He was training for a fight, and I was with him, and he was doing this exercise that he does 3 sets of 100 of a really hard exercise as part of his training to get ready to be the best fighter that he can be. Doesn't matter if you're in business or what you do, this lesson applies. And I was counting, and I said 299, 300. And he stopped in midair with all these weights and all these muscles rippling, and Evander said, was it 299 or 300? I said 300. And he said, was it 299 or 300? I said it was 300. And he went and did one more. And he said, I think it was only 299. Well, I rolled my eyes, like, really? Okay? And he stopped and he said, look at me. And I turned and I thought, okay, it's been a short life, but it's been a good life. And he said, you want to know the difference? Because I was like, what's the difference? And he said this, and it literally gave me goosebumps. He said the difference between 299 and 300 is the difference between heavyweight champion of the world and every other boxer. And I just sat there, frozen for a minute. And I realized whatever you set, that is why that guy was the champion. Whatever you set out to do not stop at 299. I had a thing in my office, I had the number 299 with the red slash for it, through it. You cannot achieve your dream if you are not willing to work as hard as it takes to do it. You can't quit at 299 because there's somebody right next to you doing 300 and they're going to beat you in the marketplace. Thank you guys very much for having me.